What's up, heroes? Welcome to the Producer Life Podcast, episode 86. Today I'm joined by David López, an audio engineer who runs David López Audio and also performs under the artist name Didactic. He's an audio engineer, consultant, educator, producer, DJ, and Ableton Certified trainer. He's got over 20 years of experience and holds a degree in audio technology from SAE, where he also spent 7 years teaching recording arts and sciences. Today, David talks with us about his musical background, launching David López Audio, gain staging for live performances, and he walks us through his mixing process in detail. Before we get too far, though, I want to sincerely thank our show's sponsor, Melodics.com. If you're looking to incorporate more of a live performance element into your DJ sets and want to learn to finger drum, this is absolutely the way to do it. Melodics.com offers a desktop app that makes it really fun to learn how to finger drum, play the piano, or even play drums. It also works with just about any MIDI controller, MIDI keyboard, or even an electronic drum set, and it's available anytime you want to practice. One of the things I really like about the Melodics desktop app is its customizability. So you get to pick your lessons based on your ability level. You can select from different musical styles that you want to practice to. You can speed the session up or slow it down as you get better. You can adjust the volume on the metronome or the backing track and a bunch of other options. And what this does for you is it helps speed up the learning process and make it a whole lot more enjoyable as you jam along to music that you enjoy at your own pace. If you've ever played games like Guitar Hero, you're going to love it. There's no cost for trying out Melodics. They've got 60 free lessons for you to try out. And from there, if you'd like to subscribe to unlock additional premium content, use ProducerLife-20. That's ProducerLife, one word, -20. And that'll get you 20% off of an annual subscription or 20% off of a monthly subscription for the first 3 months. And it helps support this podcast. And now, cue the intro music. All right, David, welcome to the Producer Life Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate the invite.
You are most welcome. This is going to be a terrific conversation about, I think, music education and DJing and mixing and mastering and audio engineering and all sorts of good stuff.
Awesome. I hope I have some tidbits to impart to share with your listeners.
I'm sure you do. You've been doing this for, 20 years now?
Something like that. I've been involved with music my entire life from a very young age, about 4 or 5 years old. But yeah, professionally around 20, a little over 20 years. And just working in lots of different, areas of music and audio production. So yeah, something like that. 20-ish years.
All right. So you said you got your start when you were 4 or 5. Tell me about that. How did things begin for you?
Yeah. So I was just very fortunate to come from a musical family. I had uncles and great uncles that were professional musicians, and everyone in my family played music. My mom was a vocalist. My dad was guitar, self-taught. My sister's on piano. My brother on literally 6 instruments. Like brass and strings. So I was fortunate to be just around music, and my family just has a love for music. So around 4 or 5 years old, I started with piano, did that a few years. Then I jumped into saxophone all through school, elementary school, middle school, jazz band, all that stuff up until high school. And then I started getting into percussion and drums. Not too far after that, kind of later in high school, that I started getting into electronic music and DJing. So I've just been fortunate to kind of had access to and had support for musical endeavors my whole life. But yeah, and then kind of, after high school is when I, kind of moved more into the professional realm, which was the end of high school with some performance stuff and some, then later I went and studied audio engineering and really got heavy on the tech side.
With all of that musical background, did you ever consider any other careers, or was it always music?
I mean, it was pretty much, I think from high school when I even really was, just started really thinking about a career path. It was pretty quick that it was going to be something related to audio. to music and or audio technology. I didn't end up going to school to study music theory. I ended up going and studying, audio technology and recording arts. So yeah, there wasn't really much of an option. It was kind of the thing. So
With all that background in musical instruments and your family, what made you opt for the more technical route as opposed to the more, I guess, artistic route with the music theory and sort of a musical performance degree?
yeah, good question. I think probably what really kind of spurred my interest initially on the tech side was when my first recording session that I did in a major studio. This was in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I lived for many years, or for numerous years in high school and a few different times throughout my life. But I had this project. It was like a punk rock kind of ska band. We were called the Absentees, and we managed to have a little bit of success down there in Puerto Rico and kind of pushed the envelope a little with kind of the punk rock scene. And we ended up having our first real recording session at a major studio. And I was just kind of taken aback, man. I was like, what is all this stuff? How does it all work? So yeah, I had to focus on my drum performance, but I was just like super interested in the whole process. So that would have to be like that one pivotal moment that made me really think, oh, what's up on the technical side? Um, and I think, there's a little bit I was hoping to find some stability and still being able to, work in the music industry and pursue the musical side, but give myself that education opportunity to no matter what, if it was up or down, or if it wasn't doing that well on the artist type side, that I'd still always be working with the things that I love.
Okay. Well, good. Well, maybe that's a good segue into David López Audio. So that's your business. Tell me a little bit about that and when that came about.
Yeah, so I've had David Lopez Audio going on formally for about 5 years at this point. Prior to that, I was in education heavy for a few years. I was actually full time with SAE, the Atlanta campus, where I'm based. Um, so yeah, so I left there teaching full time, and I just started doing like freelance work again, getting into live sound. Kind of on the musical side, I was doing a bit of like corporate audio, which I've done over the years, like working for, being brought in by these production companies, doing stuff like conferences, whatever. Um, so yeah, I did the freelance thing for a bit, and but I really felt like then it was time to kind of formalize things and really, you know, create my own company and register this company and really develop something. So that's kind of where it started. And it's really just it's a way for me to work in all the different things that I do in audio. So sometimes I'm doing consulting. I do a lot of education. Sometimes I'm doing studio work, tracking or mixing. Sometimes I'm doing live sound. So yeah, I think it was just leaving that full time position and being education for a while, doing the freelance thing and feeling like, all right, I need to kind of step things up and really brand myself and create this formal company and try to push it forward.
So it sounds very much like a natural extension of your freelance work.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. It was really just kind of packaging it and branding it, Um, yeah, and just formalizing a company.
What with working with live audio a lot, what would you say when you go in and you're doing consulting? What are some of the big things that people like the big mistakes that people make with live audio? What are some common errors that, for example, a mobile DJ would be interested in avoiding in their setups?
Yeah, good question. So I will say this, like a lot of the consulting that I do is a little more like production related and studio related, but there still are kind of some live sound things as well. If it were, and what were you saying again? Kind of like a DJ, like a mobile DJ situation or something like that?
Yeah, and the reason this is on my mind, there's a
Yeah.
Facebook group, Bad DJ Setups, and some
Yeah.
of them are just absolutely cringy. But I'm thinking, you you have seen probably some bad setups in your years. What are some common mistakes when people are setting up their PAs, their subs, their mixers
Yeah.
that they should avoid?
So I think sometimes just like really considering the venue and placement of, say, your speakers and subs, just to get like optimal sound and optimal throw throughout the venue. Um, I also what I found a lot with people that maybe don't have that formal training is really poor gain staging. People are just not watching, in a proper, appropriately adjusting levels, getting that good signal to noise ratio with their inputs. Even just on DJ rigs, as well as me and DJing out, and you see it at clubs, you see it at corporate, it doesn't matter. But yeah, people are just like redlining heavy just from their players. You know what I mean? Just going into the mixer, and then the output from the mixer often redlining as well. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a little misconception that like if you hit the red, it's like terribly bad, and not necessarily. Most meters, if you're hitting the red, you either are distorting, you're overloading, or you're close to it. In many cases, you're close to it. So I kind of lean more on like, hey, if you're hitting the red from time to time and you're not hearing any audible distortion, then hey, I think you're all right. Um, but yeah, just like proper gain staging and understanding that you have to keep a good, healthy signal level throughout your entire chain, regardless of, you know, if you're going through a lot of different devices or a very simple rig. So I think for kind of that more like mobile DJ example, I think those would be the biggest things. Just really think about your environment, making sure also that you have the appropriate PA for that venue and for the audience. Is it a 50-person crowd? Is it a 500-person crowd? And making sure that you have, enough power and amplitude. Then placing the stuff well, and yeah, just keeping a good clean signal, regardless of what you're running through. So, yeah.
I've heard the rule of thumb for mobile DJs is like 5 decibels per audience member or something like that. How do you feel about rules of thumb like that, or what do you use to calculate?
Yeah, so I don't really have anything specific. It's almost kind of instinctual. And thinking, I'll just kind of think, all right, well, there are 100 people here, there are 200 people. If it's something like, 100 people and not that big of a venue, like you might be cool with like two full range, 15-inch speakers, and, at least one sub. I'd probably still like to have two subs. But, I gotta say, it's not like I have some specific formula that I run to, and, I appreciate that engineers do and their specialties, but it's kind of just instinctual and thinking, hey, is like just a stereo pair going to work for me? Is a single sub? Do I think that's going to throw and carry through this big of an audience? Once you start getting to bigger crowds, 150, over 100 towards 200 plus, then yeah, I'm probably bringing in another pair, kind of like some side fills. Um, so yeah, I don't have anything too specific on that. It's almost become kind of instinctual, really.
Okay. And you were talking a lot about the importance of signal flow and gain staging. Can you walk my listeners through kind of what's your basic process for making sure you've got strong signal flow throughout?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's just about, like signal flow in general. It's just about going from the very beginning from your source, right? And then working your way through from your transducers, your microphones, or your players in the DJ rig. So, always start at the beginning, you know? So, yeah, if I've got a dialogue mic, a vocal mic, I just want to make sure that input sensitivity is good. It's a good, healthy level, but isn't distorting. And then next up, that's going to feed through that XLR into a channel. Or I'm sorry, you're gain staging on the channel anyway. But one thing is kind of like, hey, just that you're not hitting the mic too hard. Then the mic actually going into a channel that you've got good gain staging there. And then whatever sources, whether it's 3 or 6 or 10 or whatever it might be, that you've got good gain staging on your master, that you're not overloading your master, right? And then we move on to, let's say you're using some active monitors, some subs, and they're going through to some tops, just that output isn't hitting your subs too hot either. And then that pass through that's going to your full range, that you've got a good healthy level and you aren't distorting there. So, I think what's interesting about gain staging is it's really very easy, yet somehow it's still kind of overlooked. I think people just don't really have the right training or the knowledge, are not aware to look at those things. But for me, the process is really literally start at the beginning, start at the source. If I have a microphone on a guitar cabinet, whatever, like I want to make sure that sound is coming good, through that amp and out of that speaker cabinet at a good level. I'm going to think about my positioning of the microphone. And then again, that I've got good gain staging from there on. So make sure you've got a good source. Think about placement of the microphone if it's a microphone situation versus something that's going direct in, like a line out of a DJ mixer. But yeah, literally pick every single point, A, B, C, D, E, and monitor that to make sure what's going out of one device is at a good, healthy level, and it's going at a good, healthy level. The next device in the chain is receiving that at a good, healthy level, and so on and so forth. And using your ears too. We have all these visual resources, and we should utilize them. But I always say, hey, rely on your ears most. So I hope that helps a bit. It's just, you got to look at every step in the chain, from the source all the way to your final, driving your speakers, your final output.
Okay, good. You've got, when I was looking at your website and your Facebook page, you've got a very diverse set of clientele, everything from clubs to corporate to kids with some of your summer camps that you've been running. What's the major difference between working with like a club versus a corporate client, or is there much difference? Is it all the same?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much. At the end of the day, these are still live events, right? It's live audio production, and ultimately everything has to be going into your system, into your main console, and everything has to be clear going out. I think it's really more just kind of different frames of mind. In the club, you're dealing with, club owners, and you're dealing with a lot of promoters. And sad but true. I'm sure and have seen, and especially in the music scene, especially even in the electronic music scene, as I know you're heavily involved in, and me as well. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of egos. There's a lot of attitudes, right? And there's a lot of like impatience. And people aren't knowledgeable. You're there as the professional. It's like, oh, hey, this doesn't sound good. People are very quick to like bark at what they think isn't right, even though they have no idea what's going on. So, going back to your main question, you're still dealing with keeping a client happy, with keeping a promoter happy. So yeah, ultimately it's just all the sources, everything that's going on, all that program material has to sound good either way, and the clients have to be happy either way. But on the corporate side, you get attitudes, you get, people are under a lot of stress creating these events for months. They don't understand what you're doing technically. They just, want to jump on you quick. So I think for the most part, you're kind of dealing with the same stuff. Ultimately, it's keeping the client happy and making the system sound good. But yeah, it can be tough kind of in the club and the more musical side. And just there tends to be a little more ego. Like, for example, this has happened to me. Here's a kind of interesting, I think it's an interesting story, kind of funny. It's happened to me like 3 times now. And, I had a system up and running. Some of these were like one-off shows here in Atlanta with like, a PA that was brought in, or I was brought in to run a PA. And some were in like, standing established clubs. But, I had the system running great, everything gain stage popular, a nice balance throughout the venue. And then all of a sudden the DJ comes on and it sounded like shit. And I quickly am double checking my stuff and what's going on. And, might run up to the booth or to the stage and like I'm hearing distortion, right? Like something's funky. All of a sudden the quality has gone way down. Things are distorted. What is up? So, do a quick check on my console. I might have some dynamic range processing, some compression, blah, blah, blah. Did I hit something by accident? But, in all these cases, like the night was already just up and running smooth. Like there's not that much more to do at that point than kind of babysit, keep those levels on point, adjust the highs, adjust the subs a little bit, things like that. But so yeah, anyway, a few times this happened. All of a sudden the DJ comes on and it just sounds terrible. I check my stuff. I go up to the booth. In some cases they are distorting a little bit, but like that's not the source. And so like the 3 times this happened, it was literally had to do with like it was just super low quality files, MP3s on people's drives, like syncing from Rekordbox. And I'm trying to think if there's something else in that situation. But yeah, what it comes down to is it was completely out of my control. I was doing my job. One time someone had there were some errors or something when they synced to Rekordbox. So not only was it just low quality audio and they just had like low quality MP3s, but there were dropouts. Like one time it was just the middle of the night and all of a sudden like tracks are just like stopping for 2 seconds.
Were they trying to stream it?
No. These were just like live venues, like in the club or outside a club at some party, one-off party where we brought in a PA. Okay. But yeah, like just super low quality audio, low quality files, like mishaps with the sync, just like corrupt stuff, corrupt files, audio dropping out. And literally there was nothing that I could do. And I'm still trying to figure out the whole time. Promoters come over. David, what's going on? I'm like, hey, I'm looking. All good. Just stay patient. I'll continue looking into it. I said, but honestly, I'm not seeing anything on my side.
How do you politely say the DJ's files sound like crap?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty much just the way I was saying it there. I mean, and I won't, say that directly, but, just say it's all about keeping your clients, calm. You got to stay calm, which is so much easier said than done when shit just goes awry. So I really do just like I was mentioning it there, I try to keep just a calm tone and, hey, I'm sorry this is going on. I am looking into it already. I promise we'll figure it out. Just stand by, please, and I'll continue looking into it. And yeah, a couple times there was literally nothing I could do. It was only when that DJ left and the next DJ came up did all of a sudden the sound just snapped right back to this high quality. I've even had times where friends of mine, colleagues that are, accomplished producers and engineers and musicians, and they'll be present in the club and they like come over, they're like, dude, I was really wondering what was happening. Like, I know you know your shit, David. Like, what was good? And I'm like, yep. It turned out it was just like corrupt files and super low, uh, you know, quality MP3s. And they were just taking them out. They're like, dude, I know what you do. So they're like, we couldn't understand what it was. Oh, makes sense. Yeah, it was not on your part. So, but yeah, and I just with the promoter, same thing. I'm like, it could be his files, it could be, their files, their drive, whatever it is. But I promise you, I've checked everything in my system, and I don't see any issues whatsoever. And then boom, their set is over, and all of a sudden, it sounds great again. So that's the nature of the game. It's live, it's on the fly.
Yeah.
Shit happens. You just do the best you can.
What's your opinion on the perpetual debate about 320 kilobit MP3s versus WAV or AIFF? Can you hear a difference? Do you play lossless formats versus compressed formats when you're performing live?
Yeah, so great question. I know there are a few different parts there, but I really do nowadays do just 320 MP3s for that DJ stuff. And I used to always have, like, I am an audiophile. I'm an audio engineer. I always err towards that super high quality audio. Um, but no, I don't think there's that big of a difference in the club environment. Things are really loud. Um, I think you're fine with those 320 MP3s. That's what I've been rocking for a while. But yeah, at first for like years in the digital domain, I was like wave, wave, wave. Like I like uncompressed, full fidelity, resolution audio. But yeah, on the DJ tip, I'm cool with, higher quality MP3s. But I don't ever have anything under that 320.
Okay. One of the other things that you do, as I understand, with David López Audio is mixing and mastering for clients. What can you talk us through? I guess first question, I assume since you're an Ableton certified instructor, are you using Ableton for mixing and mastering, or are you also using some other DAW?
Awesome. So, I've been using Ableton for about 10 years now, but I was a heavy Pro Tools user, and I still use it from time to time. I don't currently have I was doing it like subscription based for a while, like month to month, so I don't currently have that active. So on the mixing side, and just even tracking, right? Like if I was working with a band, um, I really used to be on the straight engineering versus the more production and composition. I was really all about Pro Tools for many, many years. And it's only in the last few years, like 2 to 3, that I kind of started leaving Pro Tools behind and doing all of that mixing stuff and tracking in Ableton. With Live 11, excuse me, and the takes and the comping features that were added, that's really made me even more comfortable and very happy about doing straight tracking for others and editing. I mean, editing, of course, was always very easy in there, like really any other DAW, but mixing, yeah. So it was Pro Tools for a while, now for a long time. And for the last few years on that straight engineering tip, 2-ish, maybe a little plus, I really do all of that stuff in Ableton. But yeah, some of those enhancements in Live 11, I've heard this all across the board. Really people are really happy about that stuff. So
if somebody sends you a bunch of stems for an electronic track, can you walk us briefly through sort of your mixing process and what tools and plugins you use?
yeah, So, at the end of the day, I always start my sessions out just by organizing them properly and acclimating myself to the elements that are present, from that artist or producer, whoever sent me the track. So I'm really big on like just workflow and keeping your sessions very easy to understand, easy on the eyes, and just kind of focusing on the things that you want. So number one is just making sure I've got good quality audio files. They're solid throughout. Acclimating myself to what is present, what the different elements are. Bringing them in the session, organizing that session. I'm big on color coding. I generally go from like a darker to a lighter. So usually on the far left or at the top, depending on like what view you're looking at, or how you're looking at things. Um, I will have my drums, and I group things like right off the bat too. So maybe there's 8 tracks or 12 tracks of acoustic drums. I'm going to bring them in, and I have my way. I always like kick, snare, hat, tom 1 2 3, overhead left and right, room left and right, which is like kind of a standard just type of setup for live tracking drums. Then I'll have my bass group after that, which might be one mic and one DI if it's more of a live sound type situation. And then maybe guitars, keys, whatever, vocals, other things, maybe some synths or whatever it is. But organization is key. You have to acclimate yourself to all the elements that are there, to know what you're working with, and you got to organize that session very well. Once I'm in that good spot, and that usually is my first session, I might not even like really be mixing one day. I'm just like downloaded the files, checking them out, hearing the song a little bit, organizing it, color coding it, right? Then when I really go to work, the first thing that I like to do is really get the best balance that I can of all the elements without using any processing. Like I don't jump right in. I really try to just get the best blend of all these elements just using faders, right? And by the way,
Mhm.
another thing I'll check is there's good gain staging with all the files. It's very easy in the digital domain. Of course, if something's just really on the low side, you can just gain it up. So just to mention that as well. But yeah, getting back into the mix process, yeah, I want to get the best blend possible without using any processing whatsoever. No spectral stuff, no EQ, no filtering, no dynamic stuff. Just get it sounding good, and also do some initial kind of panning and working with the stereo image a little bit. Spend a little time to get that the best I can. After that, I tend to, well, I mean, it just varies from time to time, but I like to often compress before equalizing. But a lot of times I just kind of start putting on EQs and just trying to get like a basic um, little blend of tonally what's going on in the song, and maybe high passing certain things or just using a low shelf to control the bottom a little bit. But I kind of go towards getting a bit of a spectral balance, like a tonal balance, right? So first I'm just dealing with amplitude, getting things the best I can. Often I'm trying to work a little bit after that on the spectral side of things, basically EQ and filtering. Um, and then there's the dynamic range component. And these things still like move around, you know what I mean? There is no exact, way that it always goes. But, I want to control dynamics and get things kind of sitting where I want. Compressing things will generally make us perceive them as louder. It also has an effect on like a sense of depth, which a lot of people starting out don't really think about that element in a mix. They're just thinking about like levels. They're thinking about panning, maybe tonal balance. And yeah,
What
and
do you
then when
mean by
things,
what do you mean by a sense of depth when you
yeah,
compress?
yeah, very good. So literally like a forward back element to a mix, right? So generally things that are more compressed, they have a smaller or tighter dynamic range. Dynamic range just being that range from like the softer portion of the signal to the louder portion of the signal, right? So when things have a smaller dynamic range, we tend to perceive them as louder, even if they're not, and a little more upfront, a little more like in your face, like towards you. You know what I mean? Versus back. So, um, yeah, I mean, does that make some sense? It's literally kind of like, oh, your lead vocal is center and more in front. Your background vocals are a little further behind that. And reverb, of course, can add to this too, the time-based effect stuff. But just with compression alone, like I tend to compress my background vocals a little bit less. They're a little dynamic, and they tend to feel and you hear them a little further behind, say, a lead vocal. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of what I mean with sense of depth, a sense of depth.
Okay.
Um, But yeah, and so ultimately, when I'm getting the dynamics in play, and then I tend to move more towards the end of it, towards like the sense of space, so like reverb, right? Um, which often I'm just using like two reverbs. You're not using that many different reverbs. It depends on the type of music as well, right? Because I'm going to approach things differently in a more electronic scenario than if I'm working with like a rock band, right? But that sense of space is often to just give a shared sense of space. So I often only have like a few, two or three reverbs, like a shorter, a more mid-length, and a longer. Um, but yeah, and then after kind of the sense of space, I move more into kind of the sprinkling on top, like things that just add kind of interest, like delay throws and stuff like that. So that's kind of like overall, just basically how I run through a mix. The one thing is that I do also sometimes I focus more on the dynamics before the like tonal spectral side, um, because I tend to like to kind of compress before equalizing. There's a big debate on that. I'm sure you heard as well. It's like EQ before comp or comp before EQ. And what I say is there is no right or wrong. I mean, sometimes you can literally just swap, the flow, the signal flow, and move one device, behind the other and see, how that's affecting the signal, and maybe you like it more. But in general, I tend to compress first, and then equalize. Because when you compress, it actually affects, you're actually making certain like softer sounds louder, right?
Mhm.
Compression is kind of crazy in that it works on the top end, the louder portion of the signal, and it pushes it down. But at the same time, once you've got a more controlled, smaller dynamic range, by pushing those louder sounds in the signal down, well, the last step in your process with compression is using output gain or makeup gain to make up for that attenuation, that drop in amplitude, pushing the loud portion down. So when you use your output gain, you're actually taking the softer sounds and you're pushing them back up, right? Along with the top end going back to where you were originally. I hope I didn't get overly techy or confusing with that. But long story short, when you compress, you're going to bring up, particularly with the output gain, you're going to bring up the softer portions of your signal.
Right.
So compression is going to affect your spectral content, your tonal content. So I tend to like to kind of get the dynamics where I want first, and then the resulting tonal content, then I'm EQing that, I'm contouring that. And the last thing I'll say on that is that, you can use, multiple instances of any device. So, you can EQ a bit and then you can compress and then you can EQ a little bit more,
Mhm.
right? Because that tonal content has changed a little bit from the compression. But to sum up the whole thing, man, I'm kind of like, yeah, levels, get them on point, basic stereo imaging, start getting into like dynamic range control, spectral control with equalization and filtering, stuff like that. Then I move on more to sense of space with reverb. Then I get a little more creative with the sprinkling on top and, distortion, automating things, adding delay, throws, stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's one of the ways I always explain it to my students. I'm like, delay, delay, delay. So, yeah, that's kind of it. And, watching gain staging all the way throughout. Um, and yeah, and I also, I guess the other thing I put in there is I tend to do more individual processing first, and I tend to leave my groups alone in getting as far as group processing and just getting everything as tight as I can without that group, bus compression on the bass bus or on the drum bus or whatever it is. I think it makes sense. This kind of goes back to getting your levels set and just kind of working with the mix just with levels and no processing. You kind of want to do the best you can at every stage so that the next stage is a little bit easier. Um, so yeah, by individually working with all your individual processing and getting that to sound as on point and solid as you can, then you're probably gonna have to do less. It's true, you're gonna have to do less in on your bus processing, on your group processing. Um, so yeah, I hope I didn't ramble too much on that one, but let me know if there was anything I didn't hit there or anything
No,
else you're looking for there.
that was a terrific walkthrough, and I think that that concise way of explaining things goes to your years of being an educator as well, which I guess kind of brings up your Ableton Live 101, 201, and 301 that you've got available on your website. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about those courses and what they'll learn there?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you mentioning them. And the one thing I'll say about this course is that I got really hit. Well, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but we all got hit so hard with the pandemic, and definitely for me on the live sound stuff. But the reason I mentioned this is because I actually went to launch those courses. They were literally going to launch in March of 2020. So I just had to cut them completely. And it was only in the last, few months as things have gotten better that I've gone to launch them again. And currently, the way I have it set is to do some fall courses here starting soon. But I've got some other contracts and some things that have come my way. So unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to be pushing them back till January. But either way, those are happening. And my whole approach with these courses is, well, one, I mostly up until now, up until these courses, I've mostly offered kind of, a la carte, a lot of one on one, right? Like it was mostly one on one. I would go to the client or student. Here and there, they would come to me if I knew them and they were vetted, and I felt comfortable bringing them to my setup. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of one on one, and I would do seminars and stuff like that. Like churches might call me in for live playback stuff, or a college or university might bring me in to do something. But I wanted to start offering like group instruction. And, I also thought, I want to do something different. And so my whole approach with these courses is in studio, small group, hands on courses. There's definitely going to be a theory component as well. But yeah, they are taking place, and I'm actually doing them out of Onda Blue, which is a smaller, basically private studio here, but a professional spot, no doubt. Um, but they don't, do too much advertising and stuff. It's more for a few people that work out of there and their clients, right? But this is a fully functional professional studio. So yeah, I wanted students to be able to come and be in a group, but not have it be too many, right? Because I still want to have like fairly individualized attention.
Hmm.
So I'll do these classes from really like I will still run them for two students at a bare minimum, but usually we're looking at like 4 to 6 students. That's it. At some point, I might up it to 8. But yeah, I want it to be like intimate, so you still feel like you're getting some one-on-one attention, but you have other people to play off of and work with, and to network with and stuff like that. So yeah, there are 3 tiers. It's pretty much what it sounds like: a 101, 201, 301. A beginner for really little to no experience whatsoever, an intermediate if you have a basic understanding of, say, Ableton Live's user interface, or basic concepts relating to kind of gain staging, or basic concepts for mixing, stuff like that. And then the advanced going just a little further, digging more into like synthesis and sound design, and like even some digital audio theory, and rendering and dither and basic mastering. So it really is, yeah, kind of beginner, intermediate, and then more advanced, but all about being small group courses in a real world studio environment. So I'm really excited about it. I just have had multiple hurdles, the biggest one being the pandemic. Then I was ready to launch. And yeah, I got this great contract with the school here, this phenomenal, very progressive thinking, project based high school in Atlanta called the New School. And so I'm running and teaching their audio production program, which I'm just lecturing twice a week, or a total of about 4 hours. Um, but I was brought in kind of last minute, and I really had a lot of work to do, just in kind of putting things together and figuring out how I wanted to develop the curriculum and lay that out for the year. So I think I'm gonna have to push back a little bit, and I'm thinking about using kind of the holiday time to make a good marketing push.
Okay.
Um, and I'll probably push them back till January. But I'm really excited about it, and it is happening. And yeah, you can all find all that stuff, of course, on my website. And all.
Okay. I'll make sure to have
Appreciate
a
you
link to
asking.
that. Now, is that going to be like a 8 hour a day thing, or is that like evening classes, or what are you picturing?
Yeah, very good. So what I'm doing right now, it'll really be like 100 minutes per lecture. It's going to be once a week, and then each class period, each session is 100 minutes. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, and then that is for 6 weeks. Right. So basically, depending on how you look at it, whatever, you're getting like 600 minutes of instruction. But yeah, so just weekly, once a week in the evenings. These are adult classes. I am looking to do some kind of after school program things earlier in that 4 to 5 range, and do pretty much the same thing, small group classes, but for like teens and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're 101, you come by once a week. We're there from say 6 to 7:40, and then at 8 I'll start like another class, like the 201. Yeah, and we'll do it for 6 weeks. Oh,
Sounds awesome.
well, appreciate it, man.
I think so we've talked about education, we've talked about audio engineering, we've talked about David López audio. I think the other thing I was really looking to talk about was your DJ project as Didactic,
Yeah.
which, by the way, I love your name. It's perfect for somebody that's into music education. So
I really appreciate it, and I thought on that quite a bit. I pondered the name, the nomenclature years back quite a bit, but I really feel like it's appropriate because I love all these things that I do, but I really love education. I do a lot of teaching, and it's something that's very fulfilling to me. So I felt that didactic was very appropriate. As far as that's concerned, yeah, I started in about like 2016 as I had left full time teaching and starting up DLA, as I say, David López Audio. Um, I use that. That's the project that I will DJ with from time to time here around Atlanta. I'm not always playing in the clubs consistently here these days. It can come and go. The pandemic is just a whole other thing. And I really have kind of erred on the side with my family of safety. And I'm just glad things are getting better. But we've had a lot of bumps and with the Delta stuff and all that. So
yeah.
I have not been doing as much live sound, even though I am starting to do some in the last few months. I have not been doing as many DJ gigs, even though I have done a few in the last few months. I also do corporate gigs from time to time, um, which are maybe not as fun as the club, but they generally pay better. At least for someone like me that doesn't have a big name. So yeah, I just did a wedding, a couple weeks ago, 2, 3 weeks ago. But anyway, so yeah, it's not like I'm playing on the reg too much these days, but I'm looking forward to kind of getting back out there more. And I also do percussion, like live percussion, and I'm starting to do some of those gigs. But Didactic is the project. I have released 2 EPs so far under this, and I took kind of like a larger project-based approach with them. Like the first one is called Undone, and there are 6 tracks, but there's like a main version which has vocals. I have a featured vocalist, Manny Cortez,
Hmm.
and then we put and this is really pushed by the label too, small label Trichome Inc. Trichome Music. They're here out of Atlanta, kind of boutique electronic label spanning a few different areas of electronic music. They've been around for 10 years. But this is really kind of pushed on by them. And so, yeah, we have the main mix with the vocal. We've got the instrumental on there as well. I did like a kind of a deep tech house rework in there. So those 3 were kind of me. And then there were 3 other remixes by different producers on the label. So 6 tracks, but all based off of one song. And I did a similar thing for a new urban and reggae label for my last EP, which came out a few months ago. And that's called Justice. And it was really all about our stance on the current situation in the world with racial injustice and social injustice in general. And yeah, so on there too, it was kind of like based off of that main single and putting out a few tracks and kind of stacking up an EP. So there's a main version, and this is kind of like reggae electronic
Hmm.
stuff with a featured artist called Lion Tafari. And then I've got the instrumental on there as well. I did a dub edit, which is one of my favorites. It's a little more spaced out, vibey, a few vocals in there. And then I also did a rework myself that's kind of on the bass music tip, slash like reggaeton. It's kind of like, yeah, bass, reggaeton, reggae, vibey stuff, very dubbed out. So yeah, that's the second EP that I put out. That's on Dark Alley Music. Again, new small independent label here, in urban and reggae. So yeah, those are 2 projects that I have at the moment. I've got a few things in the hopper, but honestly, sadly, it is what it is. I'm just working on other stuff, but my production has not been, the composition production has not been in the forefront right now. Um, but that's okay. There are a few other things in the works. I tried to push myself a little bit on those 2 releases, the first 2, in working with featured artists instead of just kind of doing my own thing.
Hmm.
And the first one, Undone, with Manny Cortez, it's like electronic / bass music-y pop, it's, it kind of hits these different areas. And then with the remixes, we got kind of like a hip hop, almost trappy type thing. We got a down tempo thing. We've got a bass music remix. So I wanted to push myself and kind of work with a more pop vocalist and still bring in, my elements from my history. Like I used to be a big drum and bass head for many, 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 many years. That's what I started like DJing way back in the mid to late 90s. So I think you hear those musical influences there, but I want to push myself to do something different and work with other artists. But for my upcoming projects, when I do really start focusing on them more, I'm really going just me for the most part. Some collaborations down the line, and I'm only pushing a little bit more on the 4/4 side too, and some of that kind of deep, more international and organic house stuff that I'm into these days. But I
Yeah,
try to keep it diverse. I'm
it
sorry,
seemed
go
like a
ahead.
lot of your sets gravitate towards house music, at least on Mixcloud. So, um, i-
Yeah.
is that kind of the sound that you're seeing yourself evolving into? Is sort of a tribal how not maybe not tribal, but international house kind of flavor?
Yeah, yeah. And nowadays a lot of people refer to it kind of as an organic thing. If you go up on Beatport, it's like, organic house, whatever. But yeah, it's like deep, it's dubby, it's organic. I mean, I love that stuff. You get older and I still mess with everything and I mess with some rowdier stuff too, some techie stuff from time to time, some bassy stuff on the 4/4 tip from time to time. But yeah, it's just kind of where I'm at. And, there's a lot of people are getting that stuff in the last few years, no doubt. Um, but for me, it's kind of what I did with my first two projects. One being, poppy and bass music, whatever, and the other one being reggae and electronic. I don't want to like pocket myself into like, I just do deep house. I just, produce and mix techno. I just produce and mix hip hop. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm just like, I enjoy so many different styles of music. I'm influenced by, so many different styles of music growing up from punk rock to like classic salsa. I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up hearing a bunch of like, Latin folk music, my dad's records, a bunch of old school salsa. Um, so I just love so many styles of music that I don't want to, box myself in.
Mhm.
People could say there's pros and cons with that, right? They're like, oh, well, you're kind of all over the place. But, real deal, I kind of don't give a shit, right? Like, I'm trying to remind myself that the reason I got into all of this in the first place from a young age was how it made me feel, how I think music can affect people, hopefully positively, and get them to think or get them to detach from the day to day. So I often have to remind myself, like being in the music business and being in audio production, like, damn it, David, like, have fun with this. Like, you got to do this for you. So you are going to see some stuff coming from me in that kind of deeper, organic, kind of international style, Latin stuff, a little left field, but dubby stuff that is coming. But I think I'm gonna just keep doing whatever I feel like it. And whatever the next project comes out, if it's like a hip hop down tempo thing, dope. And if it's reggae, dope. And if it's house, dope. But last thing I'll say on this, I tend to when I play out like in the clubs here, which again is not too often, but yeah, I'm playing house most of the time. Um, Corporate gigs, of course, a little different, and some clubs you have to vary it up a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I'm a bit of a house head too.
Yep, yep, totally empathize with that. So, all right, so that's what's next for Didactic. What's coming up for David López Audio? What aside from the big working with the school with the lectures, is that the big project right now, or do you have some other things in the works?
There's nothing too big in the works. It's really just getting these classes up and running. The group in studio classes with the music production with Ableton Live course series, that 101, 201, 301, launching that in January. Again, it's just been weird with all of these pushbacks, but this is life and this is business. We certainly couldn't have expected this pandemic. So that's kind of one big thing. Continue to push forward with this just incredible, this phenomenal high school that I'm working with now. Things are already settling down. Um, no, there's nothing too major. Just gonna keep doing all the things that I do. Right, a little teaching, a little consulting, a little mixing, a little mastering. So yeah, it's
It
kind of
sounds
it.
like a lot of fun, but a little exhausting too.
At times, no doubt, no doubt. But I wouldn't change it for anything, man. And I will say this is one last thing, and I'm a bit of a rambler. I'm sure you can tell. Your listeners could tell. I like to talk. That's the teacher side of me too. You got to be ready to kind of keep things going. But I wouldn't change anything like all the challenges with running your own small business, like the ups and downs, getting hit with the pandemic, like, man, it was rough. Like all my live sound stuff just disappeared, right? All the corporate DJ stuff, other DJ stuff just disappeared. But all the ups and downs, man, I wouldn't change it. I do my thing. I don't answer to anyone. And I just love it. I'm just going to keep pushing forward and trying to continue developing my business and do good for my clients and just move forward.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find both David López Audio and your DJ project online?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Brian. I've had a blast. I really appreciate you inviting me. As far as checking me out, main place would just be my website, davidlopezaudio.com. Pretty much everything is in there. On the social tip, most all of my handles are David López Audio, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, which I'm not too much on these days. And real deal, I'm not too big on social media. I'm just one of those guys. It's just me. I don't like being on there too much. But you certainly can find me on there, and I'm still present, I think. And then really with Didactic, SoundCloud, it's Didactic ATL, Mixcloud, Didactic ATL, Spotify, you can just search Finder Didactic, under Didactic, and all the major, platforms, outlets, iTunes, Tidal, whatever, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever it might be. And I guess the last thing, I have one of these kind of single link things, this solo 2 link, solo.to/David López Audio. And you click on there, you will find everything, links to everything, articles, podcasts I've been on, website, all the platforms, you name it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will make sure to have links in the show notes page. And again, I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Quick reminder for those of you in the Atlanta area. In 2 weeks, I'm performing at this awesome little microbrewery and performance venue in Peachtree City, Georgia, called Line Creek Brewing Company. That's going to be on Saturday, October 30th from 8 to 11 p.m. The event is called Booze in the Bubble, that's BOOS, and it's a family and pet-friendly costume party, and I would love to meet you guys. We've got over 500 people interested so far on the Facebook page, and so I think it's going to be a great turnout and a lot of fun. I'll have links for everything in the show notes page. Just head over to producerlifepodcast.com and look for episode 86. Until next time, this is the House Ninja reminding you to be somebody's hero today.